All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our Tips and Tricks Roundtable. My name is Kathy Baker. I am one of the Raleigh Ringers from last year, carried over to this year. It's good to see everybody here. Oh, good, up to a lot of people. All right. So the idea for this evening was to be able to provide some ideas, tips and tricks, like the name says, for either players or directors or both, to hopefully give you some ideas, answer some questions, help you through some difficult issues that you may have with anything from ringing to setting up to how do you as a director handle this, handle that. So what we would like for you to do is let us know that you're here by putting your name and where you're from, the group that you're with, in the chat. And we always like to see where people come from. And I see lots of familiar faces of people who have been with us before. Also, as we go through, if you have a specific problem or issue that you want to get a tip or a trick for, if you want to put that in the chat or bring it up as we maybe say something that makes you think of something else, or if you have a tip or a trick to help somebody with an issue that they've come up with, please, please, please. We want this to be a group discussion, not just one or two of us talking at you and just giving you stuff that may or may not be helpful to you. So to kind of kick things off, like I said, I think there's about kind of three general areas of some ideas that some of the Raleigh Ringers kicked in to get us going. And you may have some specifics or think of some things as we start talking about this. Definitely ringing issues. I know I play with a church group and there's a couple of issues that they've brought up that I've tried to help them with, or I have seen them create some unique ways to get around. There's setup types of issues. How do you set up your playing tables? How do you set up different bells, just if you've got a bunch that you're trying to play, that sort of thing. And then maybe more kind of director related, how do I as a director handle this or that? So I'm going to start to kind of get the ball rolling. The one big thing that I see that my group, my church group, has a lot of issues with is page turns. Basically, especially with the COVID separate, being separated more than usual. We all have our own books, and so we have to turn our own pages, which can be difficult at times. I know a number of the people that I play with use the little paper clips, the little wood paper clips to put along the edges of the paper to make just grabbing pages a little bit easier, or they use those little butterfly clips to put along the edges to grab to turn pages. And I know if there's a tricky passage, you have to maybe do a little memorization and turn late, turn early. Anybody have other ideas or something along those lines that they want to share or talk about? Feel free to unmute yourself and jump in or put it in the chat if you're too shy.
As a community group, iPads are a wonderful thing with foot pedals.
Oh, iPads. Yeah, I don't think our church is quite rich enough for those, but that would be a great thing for a community.
We turn pages the old-fashioned way, but my community group in Sarasota, I think there's all but two of us, all but two people using iPads, their own individually purchased iPads, using Fourscore and foot pedals. They love it.
Oh, nice. Yep, somebody said binder clips next to smallest size. That's what some of our people do instead of the little like clothespins, and they turn one thing down so they can grab that.
Hey, could I ask on using the iPads, how do you manage page turns with gloves on?
Foot pedal.
Aha.
Bluetooth foot pedal.
Nice.
Only way to fly.
Yeah.
Brian's give me a thumbs up even.
question for using the iPad and the Bluetooth pedal, which I'm very familiar with. How do your bass ringers cope with that? Because you're not always in the same place where the foot pedal is.
They manage, they send, I have 3 of them in my buckets brigade. There's 3 people and they just put the pedal where they need it. And actually I got some people that one person will turn for 3 ringers. They linked them up.
It's probably like anything else, the choreography of turning the pages, who does what when.
Yeah.
And I always tell my people, choreography is half the battle. Somebody in the chat suggests they mark the music LHPT, left-hand page turn. So maybe if you have to turn it with a different hand than you're used to. Somebody says not wear gloves. Yeah, write a measure or 2 from the top of the next page on the bottom of the page before the turn. Yeah, I do at least write some of the notes in if I have to turn it late, or memorize if you can and turn early. Copy 2 to 3 measures and paste on the page. Yep, I've done that. Another thing too, for some of the music is for crazy page turns, is maybe recopy it if you can, so that those 2 pages on the page turn are actually side by side, because sometimes the way they print the music, it's not good.
Sometimes we'll take blank address labels for envelopes, and you can put them as a tab at the bottom of the page, so that they're just barely adhered to the page, but they're mostly adhered to it. So it sticks off like a tab to grab and turn the page, but then you can actually write on it as well. So you can just put it so it continues the measure, or write whatever notes you have coming up and then literally grab it and turn. So you got a little extra margin space to write your notes in.
I've seen people do tabs like that, but that's a good idea to have it where you can write the extra music on it.
Rick, a couple questions about what you guys got going with all the iPads. So do you, have you ever had an issue? I would worry some about, an iPad doesn't boot up. Do you have a backup plan of going back to paper if you need to?
Even before HMA had their guidelines, which we followed, to the T. Everybody has their paper copy under their stand, and if an iPad goes down in the middle of the tune, they're going to share with their neighbor. In between tunes, their paper copy comes up. We don't take time out for technical repairs.
And do you annotate the music at all? Do you do any kind of,
Oh yeah, you can annotate all day on the iPad in multi-colors and multi-layers. It's fun.
And your ringers do that?
Yeah, individually. Okay. And we get the permissions from all the publishers, and 90+% of the publishers are real easy and really straightforward and quick about returning that. Every once in a while we run into issues with this one publishes it, but this one owns it, and that one bought it out. But for the most part, they're real good about it.
Cool.
Yeah, and I found that the annotation is easier even on there, because you could cleanly erase on the digital much more than you could with pencils, and you can mark up as much as you need to. And if everybody has their own individual iPads, I teach at a school that has all the students are one-to-one with Surface tablets, so we've started using them with all the students, and it's a lot easier for them to work with.
Nice.
Yeah, it's using the iPad. The 1 dB, actually it's the only dB that we've had since I got the iPad. My foot pedal went out before the concert, so I'm running around, and I actually I cut the fingers out of the glove so I could turn pages manually. And playing in the buckets, my foot pedal was close to where the music stand is, because if I was going to turn a page, I was going to have to be up there anyway.
So what I want to know is the iPad flat on the table, or is it up a little bit?
No, we put it on our music stands. We put it up on the gig stand.
Well, if you don't have music stands.
The ones that don't, I have an OtterBox.
Oh, that stands it up?
That has a stand on it.
Okay.
So I invested the extra money in the OtterBox for mine. Number one, if it falls off the music stand, it protects it. But it's also if I'm flat on the table, I've got the OtterBox with the stand on it to give it some elevation.
And Ring Sarasota is using a slight elevation for all our music books and for the iPads. They're the same. It's about 3-4 inches up. It's a little thing we got from IKEA for $5 a piece, and everybody's got them. We wanted to keep our books fairly low for the visuals, because otherwise the music sort of hides the bells.
Mhm.
With several groups, we've used if you go to like the industrial supply that have the rubber corner protectors, like that you put in like a warehouse wall corner. Those are great for, you cut them down to like a foot length and then use them as music stand props, and they will work with binders or they'll work with the tablets. Yeah, any of the, I don't know what the fancy name is, but they're basically the rubber corner protectors. You can get them from Uline or any of the other like industrial supply.
Yeah, the fancy name is corner protector.
I love it when you all get technical.
All these technical terms everybody's throwing around. Goodness. Well, that's great. Some good
I wanted to go
ideas
back to
there.
Rick, when he said the stands from IKEA, could you elaborate on this a bit?
I think it's like a laptop stand or whatever. It's black. It's about probably double book width, and it angles up. And I don't have the data on, but I can find it and get it to everybody sometime. And the back end's probably 3-4 inches up. Just makes for a nice flat, solid surface that gives a little bit of a rise for the book, but not a full rise as you would have on a notebook. And last I knew, they're like $5 a piece. Also gives you a place to hide your mouse between tunes underneath it because it's open underneath.
There you go.
I wonder what you would call that if you were going to go online to order it.
Well, I'll go browsing while we're talking.
Thank you.
It's probably just like a
It's
laptop,
a laptop
stand.
Yeah. It's called a laptop stand. I assume that it's the same thing that we have.
Juanita and Paula, I found it. I can send it to you guys.
Thank you.
Angie just put a link in the chat. There's something from IKEA. So if you want to check the chat.
That's the one.
That's the one, he says. There you go.
Thank
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one I found too.
Now the real question is, who can pronounce it?
No, I'm not going to try that.
And we'll pass.
Non-glare page covers with the next to smallest binder clips and a 3-ring binder for us low techies. Hey, that works too. All right. Anybody have a issue they want to ask about that is not dealing with page turning or iPads? Nothing they can think of. Huh?
I did see at one of the spring rain concerts we attended, one of the choirs had actually cut their music apart into single pages, punched holes in it for a 3-ring binder so that it laid flatter and was easier to turn. So some of them had copied the pages twice so that they could turn earlier where they had a difficult page turn, and it didn't impact them as much.
I always cut my music apart. Take the staples out of the middle and cut it down the middle so the pages are looser. Always.
It drives your librarians crazy, but it's a lot easier as a page turns.
Yes, on both counts.
May I point out that that comes in handy when there's a fan blowing nearby and the fan's trying to turn the music for you. If you've cut down the middle, the fan can't turn the pages as easily.
Can't get behind it as well.
Right.
Someone says, we once stopped playing and turned the pages in unison. I think we stole that from the RR. Possibly. I think there was one piece we did where there was a fermata right before the page turn, and the director held it extra long so we could all get our hands on our pages and get them turned real quick. All right, let's see what else we have for ideas.
Someone 2 weeks ago mentioned having diagrams for bell setups. Is that something used more often in the bass bells rather than the trebles?
All over.
It must have been you as you're cheering, Brian.
No, it's not me, but I definitely rehearse. Yeah, I know Dr. Payne said this last week. It's super important to rehearse the logistics of the bell changes and all that between the pieces, just as much as it is that to rehearse the music itself. So I totally support.
Call your doctor right away if you have an allergic reaction or longer swelling in your neck, severe pain.
Yeah, TRR, we have a page set up every time. We have a guy that does our setups, and so he does a CAD drawing, so we know exactly how all of the tables are going to be turned, whether short end or long end, and he goes and measures every venue, and so we know exactly where the table is going to go before we walk in the door.
VHC does the same thing. We actually have whoever our person is that has that job has all of our standard layouts, and we'll go and measure venues unless it's a venue we're extremely familiar with. And we turn to them immediately as soon as we get there to know exactly how we're setting up the tables. And once you have that, it seems like setup goes like clockwork.
Yeah, I think we had mentioned from the Raleigh Ringers the other week, in between pieces as for the bass specifically, we have little index cards that show, and I think Dave was the one that maybe mentioned it, but they show what the bass bells that are left over should look like. So because the bass bells, there's a lot of them that have to get switched out in between. And so anybody who is available can go over there. Like if I'm going out on a piece, I can go over and help the bass. And I know looking at that card, oh, these bells are supposed to be left on the cases after setup is done. So I know, oh, this bell needs to come off and be given, or this bell needs to come off the table and go back on the case to kind of help with the bell shifts. I know I'm also drawing in my music, if I have a unique setup at my position, I'm drawing, A, B, C, D, where everything goes there, just in the corner of my music or on the front of the music to help with setup as far as bells go.
Yeah, for any of the community groups that I've worked with, we've always made a list of all the equipment, everything, mallets, bells, chimes, duplicate bells that each position needs for each piece. And then we've had somebody who's been a sort of production manager position that's gone through and mapped out exactly what equipment needs to go where. And then we will rehearse that. We'll spend a good part of rehearsal, not just playing the music, but going from piece to piece to piece.
Yeah, we actually even have for the trailer, we have exactly where the bells go in the trailer because everything fits just perfectly. So we actually map out the trailer itself with bell cases and carts and everything.
That's good. Brian, do you rehearse the music in the same order every week then, so that you can get used to the changes?
As we get closer to the concert, we start to rehearse more into the concert order. And so I'll run the pieces, but then also set aside a time in rehearsal to just run just the set changes. So we'll take a half hour of rehearsal or whatever and just do not even ringing the notes, but just playing from piece to piece. And then as we get closer to the concert, the rehearsals start to be in concert order, so that we get familiar with that flow.
Well, I'm really impressed with all y'all because some of us just wing it.
I think that's a Texas thing, Stevie.
Nobody's died yet. We're okay.
See, I do this because nobody wants to listen to me talk. People want to listen to you talk, Stevie. So you're filling time talking in between sets. That's totally fine. We want to get me to shut up as soon as possible. That's why we work through the set changes.
Well, some of us just don't have
practice.
What was that, Juanita?
How long is your practice?
Community group is 2 hours every week, or at a normal time was 2 hours every week.
But for real, some of us just don't have that much equipment. And the setup is not nearly as onerous. If you have 5 octaves of one manufacturer of bells, it's not that complicated.
I'm sure some of my ringers would wish we just stuck to 5 octaves of one manufacturer, but I own all the toys that I insist on bringing out.
Yeah, but then when you don't have the extra bells, there's some, if you have a treble spot, you can't say, oh, I can pass a bell this way, which is a plus to having multiple sets. But
we have dupes, we have chimes, we have some of that, but still not. We have Pettit and Fritzens, but like for the most part, we can get by without the charts and everything. Most of it's not bad. The ones that are particularly bad, ringers just take a picture on their phone of their setup. And some people actually print it out and put it in the front of their binder, like in front of that piece of music, so they could just look at the picture and see it. Some of you draw diagrams. I mean, but it's not an every piece kind of thing, and it certainly doesn't involve any kind of computer software.
No, I
am impressed with everyone else's dedication. Very, very impressed.
Yeah, I'm definitely, especially if I'm down in the bass where you're covering multiple bells, and if I want them set up not in piano order, I have to put that at the beginning of the music. Otherwise, you will forget. I mean, I've come across that in other pieces where I may not start out that way, even like the C4, D4 position. So having that set up at the beginning ensures that I start out correctly.
Mm-hmm.
So
I like the idea that someone who's not playing those bells could come and help if there were a chart.
I think your process for the setup and what needs to happen really is very much dependent not just on your group needs, but your group personality. How formal do you present yourself to your audience, or how casual is your interaction with them? Because that's going to govern a lot of what you need to do.
But when you bring out music again after 20 years, let me tell you, it sure helps to see some kind of chart in that music of who played what and where it was on the table.
Well, that was going to be
right in there.
That's future Stevie's problem. I don't spend a lot of time thinking about her. She'll take care of it.
That was going to be one of my comments, which was possibly a non sequitur, but maybe not. Is to make sure that all of your ringers are writing on their music what notes they're playing. If they have a standard assignment, any notes that are non-standard in their assignment, and where that note goes to on the table. So, and you'll get people who are like me, who are like, well, I don't need to write that down because I remember. And I do remember, and I don't need to write it down. But 20 years from now, somebody else is playing that part. It's not me. It's no longer me in the group. And they are frustrated as all get out because they have no idea how to play that part. And it might have been an extremely complicated assignment, and I didn't write anything down. And so everybody else at the table, there might have been, 6 other people who have also now turned over. And they're like, well, I have no idea how PL played that part. Because why? Because she didn't write it down. So, I mean, it's just, you need to really insist that people write it on the music, every single little note about how the part was played. And it doesn't need to be written in pen and circled 20 times. And, every single note underlined F, 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 F. It doesn't need to be like that,
Right.
but it needs to be on the front of the page. All the bells that were played. If it's a standard assignment, anything that's non-standard, and where that note went to down the table or up the table. So there you
It's
go.
also a really good idea to have the director write that in their score as well. Every time one of those changes is made, so that they're all contained in one part. That is something I need to be better disciplined at. But when I do get it done, it's very helpful, because it's amazing how many times people will actually mark it and then have no idea what they're marking meant. I don't know what this means.
Yeah, we have a full Excel spreadsheet that has, all of the assignments together, and you'd be amazed how much that spreadsheet doesn't match what the ringers have. So it's just good to have it in both places, so you can at least have the argument. So yeah.
And then I know for our group, that what worked in one group might not necessarily work this time around, because we have fewer people, more bells, fewer bells, whatever, but at least you have something to start with. So yeah, definitely writing things down. The older I'm getting, the more I need to do that anyway. So yeah. Good ideas, good discussion. All right, what else? Any other issues? Things you can think of? If not, I'll go to our list and see if that brings some more discussion. Let's see.
I'm curious what people do to recruit new ringers, especially with coming out of COVID. We've lost 2, one from a move to another state and another one who has severe health issues. So what do you guys do for recruitment?
Word of mouth, advertising, even putting on Facebook, social media. Mostly that.
We've had some pretty good luck with just putting advertising out there. I never thought we would just get a cold response to a Facebook ad or a sign or something, but we've had a few people just show up for our audition date that was published without sending an email or something first. It does happen, but for the most part, most of our great members have been personal recruits from our current ringers. That's been really good and really helpful.
I really think it depends on where you are. I mean, it's what one group does is not necessarily going to work for another, because, if you're in an area where there's a lot of churches with a lot of handbell groups or a lot of music programs, or schools and universities with music programs, you're probably going to have more success finding musical people from which to pull than if you're in a smaller area or an area where there just aren't a lot of churches or universities. So you just kind of have to take that into account, I think.
for some of the community groups, how do you find the promotion? What do you find works best to promote your concerts?
Well, Three Rivers Ringers, we rely on the venue, have them help promote it in their area. We've had churches that have actually put signs outside their, big billboard type signs outside their church advertising it. They advertise in their bulletins. We've had even some venues put ads in the paper advertising it. And then we will send out an email blast to our donors, our donor list, telling them our schedule, posted on Facebook. But that's basically having the venue help advertise it for us.
That's a really hard question to ask. If you're a group that plays in the same location over and over, like consistently all the time, there's probably one answer for that. But I think most community groups play in a lot of different venues and a lot of different locations. And I mean, each one is different. I really don't have anything helpful. I'm sorry.
I mean, it sounds like we're doing most of what's all been suggested. So thank you.
Yeah, I do. If it is possible, what Stevie was saying about having a consistent venue, because I know with Virginia Bronze, we had a venue that we went to 3 or 4 times a year and we were always there. And so that you started building up a consistent audience that way. So if you've got a venue that can do that, that you can return consistently to, that will help with the marketing. And then we've always, any outside venues other than that, we've had them, like was mentioned before, we've had them help with the marketing. So we've put all of our promotion focus on the one that concert that we were hosting at that consistent venue, and then had the individual churches do the other programs.
And it totally depends on what your pay structure is with the venue. So are you going there and selling tickets? Are you the ones responsible for getting a crowd? Is the venue paying you a set fee, so they are the ones responsible for getting a crowd and taking an offering to cover their expenses? Are you going to a performance hall where you and the venue are just going to split the ticket take? Like, because we've done all 3 of those. So they all take very different approaches, and they're all legitimate approaches. But each one has a different strategy. I don't know that.
When I was playing with the Gateway Ringers in St. Louis, we had a list of various social media places, i.e. The newspapers would have calendars, the radio stations would have calendars. And so it was somebody's job before every concert series to go and post all of our concerts on those various websites.
The other thing I'll say is, okay, so you've been going for a while and you've been doing concerts, and maybe you are fortunate enough to have the same venue and you've built up a little audience. And so now they've heard you, and you're once again having a spring concert, and your audience is maybe just, handbell fatigued. So they're like, okay, I've heard them before, I'm not going to go this time. So your programming is what's going to bring people back. So you need to do something different now. You need to have a handbell concert that features, the flute, or have a handbell concert that features the local children's choir. You need to do something different that will enliven your audience, make your audience more interested, but also will bring in a new audience, because, you have the local children's choir, all of their parents are going to come. So, so think about that when you're thinking about, how do I get audience? How can your programming enhance your audience?
That's a great idea.
Yes, for sure. Thanks for sharing.
To expand on that, you should know who your intended audience is before you buy any music. When you program your show, if you're doing a show of all video game themes, well, you're gearing towards a younger audience. Your audience acquisition strategy needs to match that. If you're doing, we did a Memorial Day concert once, a memorial concert. So who's your audience for that? Well, it's old people. That's who's going to come out for a Memorial Day concert of patriotic tunes. So we put together a physical press kit for that one, which is the only concert we've done it before, an actual folder of all the concert flyers and about our group and all that, and went to the local nursing homes and assisted living centers within 10 miles of our venue and said, can I talk to your activities director? And like physically handed over the packet of information. And they are looking for activities for people like that. So, you know, they came by the bus. It was really nice. It was great, but that's because we tailored to a particular audience. That same approach doesn't work if you're planning video game music. So like PL said, what are you doing and who's your intended audience?
Somebody added in the chat, invite the local children's choir, but put them in the second half of the concert. Otherwise, they all leave at intermission. So yeah. Good advice. Another question from the chat. Any advice on beginning a donor or benefactor program? From anybody who may have done that.
What do they mean by donor or benefactor program? I'm not sure what like a special fund or.
Kathy, do you think they're talking about like our Friends of the Raleigh Ringers program?
Maybe that's what it is.
That we started
Yes.
Way back in the beginning. And we would put in our programs, our printed programs, for everybody to read. If you'd like to become a friend of the Raleigh Ringers, you know, sign up here. And Angie can probably answer better what we do now. That was back in the day.
Well, I know Virginia Handball Consort has recently been revamping our benefactor and donor program. And we have on our website, we will show especially the current year, or in this case, really kind of last year because of COVID. But we have everything broken down by like a dollar amount, or if someone has passed away and left the group a donation, and there's a memorial fund, which happened when my dad passed. There's a memorial fund there. So things like that are recognized on our website as well as in our programs for concerts.
Several groups that I've worked with have had success actually putting together a specific wish list or a price list of your costs, whether it's music costs or things that you'd like to purchase, because giving donors something specific to, this is, if you donate, this is the kind of thing that we're gonna that you're gonna help out with us. That makes people a little bit more likely to give than just generic give us money. So we've had success with actually listing it out, and the wish list has a whole level of things from like one set of music or whatever, like $20-$30 items, all the way up to we'd like the 7th octave of bells, all the way up to that kind of list. But having at those levels can help them feel like they're really contributing to something specific.
Oh yeah, definitely. We've done that too. That really does. People do want something tangible that they can give to. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I will say, finding for your organization, what is the thing that your people are invested in with your group? So, you know, for the Raleigh Ringers, I hate to say hook because it sounds very calculated, but one of the big things is concert tickets to our spring and holiday concerts here in Raleigh. People want them, they want to sit close, they want to sit where they want to sit. So that kind of became one of the draws of our donor program, is we kind of built it around comp tickets, early access to tickets. and things like that. So finding for your organization, you know, what are people going to be able to feel invested in? You know, is it buying the merchandise? So maybe you start with a campaign to buy, you know, a duplicate set of bells to expand your music, or you buy new cases to better protect things. So maybe you start with that campaign, and maybe you do a couple campaigns. And once you have a list, then you can launch, hey, we're doing an ongoing Friends of the XYZ, or patrons, or whatever you want to do, however you want to call it. And here's the benefits that you get at different levels. And it's going to be different for every group, because all of you have different things that your people are going to kind of latch onto. So it doesn't, you know, you can start small. And I will say it is hard to change once you get going, but it's not impossible. We've made some shifts in our program, and you get a few people who might be a little uncomfortable with that change and might express that to you, but you handhold them and you walk them through, and, you know, thank them for their patronage and help them understand why the change was necessary. But that would be my advice, which hopefully is helpful.
Somebody in the chat asked, is something like Patreon a useful mechanism to fund the bell choir?
The thing about something like Patreon is you have to have, like, it's usually with something that has regular content that you're putting out. So you as an ensemble would have to be providing some sort of content or something that's regularly out to your Patreon supporters. So it puts a little bit more work on the group. But if you are willing to do that, it can be worth it.
Patreon works best if you get people who are monthly subscribers instead of per event or per product. I mean, you can set it up whichever way you want. That's kind of the point of it. But if you are actually looking to monetize your group in a way that you could like pay a staff member or something, you would need actual subscribers. And there may be people who are willing to do that, but I don't know that the people who'd be willing to do that would be any less willing to just donate to you organically, and then you bypass the Patreon fees.
Makes sense to me. You're quite welcome. Okay, let's see. What direction do we want to go now?
I was not on 2 weeks ago, but I thought someone said that there was going to be some information about how to practice difficult techniques or difficult passages.
We can definitely talk about that. For as far as just ideas for how to handle them.
I guess so. I don't know. I don't know. That's just what I was.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Difficult passages can be for one ringer in a smaller group, or can be for multiple ringers in a bigger group. I hate to use the words "it depends" that we've already used a bunch before, but it depends. What bells you have, what extra bells you have, what extra hands you have. You know, maybe I know in the Raleigh Ringers, we do a lot of, if somebody's having trouble getting a number of bells in a run, or they can't get from one bell to the next, hey, is there somebody that has a free hand, you know, in that measure that can take an extra C4 or whatever and ring it, you know, just in that one spot or these two spots. If you're lucky enough to have extra bells and extra people that can do that here and there, that works. Sometimes it's a matter of you have to, on an individual level, if you can't do that, maybe you have to do some of that rearranging of your bells to get them set up in a different way, so you can get the weave or you know, pick up the bells that you need to and drop them when you need to, sort of thing. I've had to do that to some weird looks from my fellow ringers, but it works. And what I tell, especially my wonderful group that I play with at church, is just, you just have to practice, figure out what works and practice. Because again, choreography is half the battle. But other ideas, suggestions? Stevie's raising her hand.
Practice it like you would any other instrument. Like we talk all the time about a handbell choir being a single instrument, but we do precious little rehearsal where we actually treat it like a single instrument. So one of my first instruments was violin. And if there's a difficult passage on violin, well, first I'm going to work on my intonation, and I'm going to take that passage and I'm going to play all the notes and make sure I am hitting exactly each note. I'm not worried about the rhythm. I'm not worried about the dynamics. I'll play each note as a quarter note. And then I'm going to practice the rhythm, and I'm going to practice the rhythm without the notes in the way. You break it down to the smallest components and you practice one at a time until you can add them back together. You can do the same thing on a bell choir. It's incredibly effective to take that awful chromatic passage and say, there is no rhythm. Every note is a quarter note. And we're gonna play it you can only do this on the unison rhythm parts, but otherwise you have to like have each person on their own practice that, and then practice just the rhythm. Everyone plays it on whatever bell that they have. And then you practice the rhythm in a different format. If it's straight 16th notes, then you do long, short, long, short, long, short, long. You mess with the rhythm so that you can get back to it. Anyone who's had any other instrumental background, you already know everything you know about how to practice. You just got to figure out how to apply it to bells.
And going a step beyond the individual notes and doing what Steve was saying. The Drink Sarasota, before weekly rehearsals, there's about a half hour where their section was going on. Trebles, battery, and bass bells, they're doing their own thing for a half hour, 45 minutes, working out their sectional trouble spots before we bring it together in a full rehearsal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Stevie, my husband, some of the things that you mentioned, my husband uses that with his violin students. So I never thought about translating it to handbells. So those are some good ideas. Thank you.
And then as you start to put those pieces together as a group, take it slow. You know, if it's like a difficult, because it's a fast piece with a lot of stuff, just start out and slow the tempo down and make sure everybody, kind of similar to what Stevie was saying, make sure you can get it at that slower tempo, and that you've got the, how do you pick up things and how do you do things, and then you slowly speed it up and eventually you'll get to speed and you'll be hitting everything.
The other thing is, how much can you encourage your ringers to practice at home? There's a difference between practice and rehearsal. And I don't think in handbells we quite have that distinction. And I mean, what Stevie was talking about with instruments, we practice every day. We practice at home every day, and then we come together for rehearsal as a full ensemble. And that's what handbells should be doing with community groups. That's what Sonos aspires to do. Send everyone home to practice with their bells and then come together for the rehearsal. But people have to commit to finding a way to practice on their own at home, whether or not they have bells.
Mm-hmm.
So they need to figure that out somehow. Either get bells or just figure out how to make something that feels like bells, stand in for my G and my G sharp and my F and my F sharp. And okay, I'm going to practice. I'm going to put on a tape on my headphones and I'm going to practice with, the patterns and the rhythms. But have that practice, whether it's 10 minutes, 20 minutes every single day, so that I can get that in my head. So, and getting your ringers to commit to doing that. I think you see that improvement, even if it's just with spoons and bottles, you see that improvement.
one of the methods I use is I use highlighters. And I have 4 different colors of highlighters, being sharps and naturals. And I can stop my MP3 file at any time and look at my hands. Do I have the right colors in my hand? Because it is so much getting your choreography down and picking up and dropping the right bells. And you have the time to do that at home, not refine it at practice.
Pamela, you said you listen to the music. Do you have a CD or something? Like, do you make a CD, download it from the internet of the pieces that you're playing?
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
a great idea, because the handbell chorus, or the handbell group that I play with has a sister group, which is a chorus. And that's what we do. We have a CD of all the pieces so that we can listen to them. So that's a great idea, to be able to listen to it at home and practice along.
Bring Sarasota not only gets like their music for the new season, but they get access to MP3 files for each piece in the book.
My internet dropped out, so I don't know. Did anyone mention AudioPo? The app? If you've got the music files, you can use that app and adjust the speed without affecting the pitch. So then you can practice with an audio file at whatever speed you need to go to, and it will still sound the same. The sound integrity stays.
Oh, and you said what's the name of the app? Audio.
Let me put it in the chat.
Okay, thank you.
I use Anytime Pro. And I know, like, going back to, and amen to what Pamela said between practice and rehearsal. That was perfectly said, PL. Thank you. Going back to like breaking down, like, if you're trying to break down new rhythms, one thing that can be helpful is malleting on the table as an entire choir. Have the entire choir do the same rhythm and just with their mallets and get that rhythm under them. And because chances are, as we all know, the trebles might have it, the battery might have it, it can get passed back around each other. So that's a good way to start. And I know beginning of every concert season, most of the music files you can actually find on Jeffers, and you can download them. And I will go through and create a playlist in my phone so I can sit there and listen in my headphones as I'm practicing. And then using Anytime Pro or the one that Stevie mentioned, which I was trying to find in the chat, AudioPo. Okay. I'll have to check that one out too. But you can adjust the tempos. So if you need to start out slower and then increase your speed, you have that ability.
I was just going to jump. Oops, sorry.
Sorry. And lest your ringers tell you they don't have bells at home, tell them that even going through the music and looking at their notes that they've written to themselves and just mentally thinking through how they need to be playing something. I mean, I think that that's half the battle, is the, like we keep saying, the logistics of bells, the ballet of bells, if you will. But where am I putting this down? Where am I picking this up? When am I getting a bell from this other person? When am I passing in air? And I'll sit here and I will pantomime, and I'm, not doing it exactly, but I'm moving my arms where I need to go. We've done this in vans and other things as well. Even when I listen to the music in my car, I'm still thinking about what I'm supposed to be doing. I don't have maybe the memory that some people do, so I can't, keep in my brain 100% of the time every song we may play in an entire calendar year, but it might be a song I played before, so I need to be refreshing myself for what's coming. So, and then I'll just say the other thing is people will come up to us, well, I'm sure they will to you guys too, when we were able to perform live and in person and people could talk to you. But people would come up and they would think somehow that we just started at the speeds we're performing and that's how we've always played it. It's like, no, we did not start, rehearsing this at that speed. And, I think we need to take the stigma away of, if you need to slow it down to learn it, slow it down to learn it and get it correct and play it correctly, and then speed it up as a group. Because if your technique and what you're playing is lacking, it doesn't matter how fast you're going, it's not going to sound good. So, take the time to learn it on the front side, slow it down when you need to slow it down. And then I think the biggest thing I've heard from everybody is the personal responsibility of the ringers to be rehearsing or practicing outside of the group time.
You would find me sitting at lunch with my music in front of me and my phone with the music blaring, and I'm sitting there even with pens at my desk, picking up and putting down and practicing those tricky sections just to get it in the old noggin there.
I would emphasize that playing under tempo is a tool, and always use it as a tool and don't let it become a trap. Because there are a lot of solutions that work perfectly under tempo that do not work when you're at concert speed. And it doesn't make sense to practice a solution that you're not actually going to be able to use. So the idea that, oh, I can do this when I practice it at my own tempo. So always be aware of what your goal is before you start breaking the tempo down to find a solution. You have to know what your solution is actually for. When we start off, usually we have 3 months of rehearsal for a show. And the first month is pretty much anything goes. You're expected to correct your mistakes, but you're not called out for them. You're expected to figure out all the solutions that you need to ring correctly, your page turns, all that sort of stuff. The second month is called tempo month. And from that point on in rehearsal, we're playing stuff at tempo. And that's because I don't care that you could play it right at home. That's nice for you, but I need you to play it at the tempo that the group is going to go. So we hold that as kind of an accountability month before we get into the third month, the last few weeks before concert, where we're just polishing pieces. But they have a deadline where they know tempo month is coming up, and tempo month sucks, and tempo month involves a lot of stuff with a metronome, and usually margaritas afterwards, because we all need that. But tempo is an accountability as well as a tool.
Good ideas.
Can I just give one of my biggest, I guess, tips is knowing when it's time to give a bell away. I have this sort of back and forth fight with my ringers in Velocity because, every now and then you'll get a ringer who is sort of matriculating up from a church group, and they join your group and they really are fabulous ringer, but they've never rung at a community level. And so they're just convinced that they can play all the bells. And now they're in a community group and they should play all the bells. And no, they should not. No, there's a time when, when you've gone through, and especially when you're rehearsing in a way that Velocity does, where we only rehearse one rehearsal for the whole month, one Saturday a month we rehearse. So precious little rehearsal time. So comes a point where, okay, we've played this now 3 times, and 3 times you were slow to pick up that bell off the table. You're never going to get it. It's not going to happen. And meanwhile, you got people on either side of you standing there picking their nose. So we're giving the bell away. Oh, but I can get it. I know you can get it someday, but it ain't happening in time for us to play this concert. So we're giving the bell away. I'm sorry, and so it's just, it's frustrating. The person's mad. There's this moment in rehearsal where everybody's like, but we just need to be more gracious in those moments, I think. So just know that there's a time when you have to give a bell away. It's your assignment. It's a standard assignment, whatever. But for whatever reason, just let it go. Just let it go. Yeah.
Gail, you're so much nicer than me about that because I get I can get it. And my response is always, I don't care. Like, I don't care that you can get it. It's better. And I want this person to get it. I don't even want you to try. It will look and sound better if I give this bell to this person. So that's what I'm going to do because our concert experience is not your personal gold star. That's not what it's about.
I wanted to point out, and I've given a bell away in a piece that at one point in time, I was like, let me just try this just once. And it was like maybe the first or second time we were running through the piece. And I did it, and it was great. And I still gave a bell away because I was looking like a frantic mess, and both people around me were picking their noses.
Yeah.
So it was like, I'm giving this bell away. It wasn't hard. My part wasn't hard. Tempo wise, it wasn't a problem. It was purely, it was really, why should I go through this crazy mess and look like an idiot?
Yeah. Because it looks stupid. Yes, thank you.
Yes, I mean, my neighbor's literally standing there ringing one bell here. You just play this.
When you've got DE5 position 4 and handing some chromatics and people on either side of them are doing nothing, it just looks dumb. Figure it out.
Right.
Mhm. So Pam and Stevie, you're both directors and you're approaching this from the director's responsibility to tell them to hand off a bell. Is that correct?
I am also a ringer. I started as a ringer. I consider myself a ringer first. I don't like being a director. I've been forced to be a director. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, but you're directing
I am
now.
a
So
director. Yes.
as the director, you're saying you need to give that bell to somebody else.
Yes.
Okay.
Better
and I
yet,
can say, I ring next to Karen, who was just speaking, and there'll be times where I look at her and said, can you give me a bell assist for this measure? It doesn't mean I have to give it away for the whole piece, but in these couple of measures, it makes sense for her to grab that bell. And we figure out, you have it here, I have it there. It's a sharing to make all the notes equally heard.
Yeah, I think in our group, we're pretty good about saying, can you get this bell for me or whatever. We're not shy about sharing.
It's almost always easier for your neighbor to mallet that bell when you've got the one hand that rings and one hand that mallets. And it almost always makes better visual sense for one person to take the malleted notes and one person to take the rung notes.
David, you appeared to be wanting to contribute something.
no, I was just going to say that, I mean, PL was right on with the people that come to our community groups that are used to being bell magnets where bells come to them all the time. They are not used to asking for help. So that's the very first thing we talk about in our first rehearsal of the year is said after our auditions are competitive, but the competition is over now and it's all one team. And the first time you ask for help, I know you're part of the team. The folks that just keep trying and hope you don't see that I haven't quite gotten that part yet, but maybe I'll get it next week kind of thing. You know, those are the ones we worry about. But the ones that first or second rehearsal say, I'm only getting that 75% of the time. If this person took it, she or he would get it 100% of the time. You go give them a high five, and that's exactly what it's about. So they need to learn that skill. They don't know the skill of asking for help because they have always been the helpers. And they never have needed that. So it's a brand new thing for advanced choirs to have members that, oh my gosh, I have to ask for help kind of thing. So
Or accept it when it's offered. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
I like that idea about just having that discussion at the very first rehearsal to reinforce that there's nothing wrong with asking for help or sharing bells or whatever.
Well, we always emphasize the 2-bell solution at the top, right? Everybody knows the 2-bell. If you're having a ringing problem, count your bells because it's much easier to ring 2 bells than it is to ring 1 bell or 3 bells. So immediately when there's a problem, the first thing I'm going to ask is how many bells are you ringing? Have you looked for a 2-bell solution? That helps, I think, reduce the personal failure stigma it's not that I can't get it. It's the way the music is written. I don't have a 2-bell solution here. And
Yeah.
then it's not about you.
Yeah, blame it on the composer.
That's right.
Yeah.
And it's one of the advantages of our instrument that other instruments don't. So take advantage of it. I can't say, oh, the French horn part is really hard here. I'm going to pass this off to the trombones. I can't get away with that. Take advantage of it while you can in handbells.
Right. We're all in it together. So trying to make music is the goal. Well, we are past our hour mark, guys. Good discussions here. Thank you so much for all the tips and tricks and discussions. And I'm sure there's a lot more that we could go on forever and ever and ever, but some of us kind of are going to have to get ready to go to bed. It's been a long day. If you have not, please make sure you put in the chat that you were here, where you're from. I want to put our little plug in for our next roundtable, which will be on May the 3rd, which is in 2 weeks. We're going to be talking about getting a little change ringing demonstration, I think, from Kemp Brinson. And so definitely have your headphones and be ready to go for that. We are recording these, so if you miss it or want to go back and think I thought I heard something and I can't remember what was said, those will get posted soon. So if nobody else has anything that they definitely need, thank you again so much for participating, and we will hopefully see you next time.